So that's up to.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, you're welcome.
Are you available for the session?
Yeah. Oh, and then when you would.
On our Facebook page and the drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I have a look before you post?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Put it anywhere. So I think I've already started recording. It's already recording. Yeah. And Shlomi's asking to have a look before we put it anywhere. Sure.
Just have a look around. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Sure. I mean, you will be the owner of the video. Yeah. And you'll be, I'd be interested to have in your cloud. Yeah, you're gonna have clouds shared within, and then you can find people are interested to be able to share on Facebook. I think not necessarily on Facebook. We haven't done it yet. Yeah, it's the first time that we, if we are for.
Okay, sure.
Can I present?
Hi everyone, welcome to yet another seminar. We are extremely honored to have with us Shlomi Segall today. Shlomi is an associate professor in political philosophy at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He specializes in contemporary theories of distributive justice, egalitarianism, and justice in health. He is the author of Health, Luck, and Justice, Equality and Opportunity, and Why Inequality Matters. And among several other subjects, he is widely published on issues such as utilitarianism, prioritarianism, and egalitarianism in general. And I think that Meryl would like to say a few other things about our speakers saying.
Oh, well, Shlomi also is passionate about birds. He travels around the world to take pictures of birds. And he just found a beautiful bird in the Douro region, which can only be found in that region and in Morocco. So he's very happy also about the trips.
If I can add to that, I do recall an informal conversation about this very subject in which Shlomi was present, I think, over dinner once, in which I think he said that aficionados of this practice were able to recognize each other in virtue of the way that, for instance, they looked at vestiges, shall we say, of birds on the floor. They looked up, do they not, when they see these things on the floor? And that's
When was this?
I think it will be in 2018, I think.
Oh God, okay.
At a conference. So yeah, after that.
Yeah.
To detour.
Yeah, you could have mentioned on my website, on the list of my publications, there's one in a journal called Sandgrouse. So it's a fully academic publication in ornithology. So yeah, sometimes it catches me. Thank you. So can I start? So first of all, thanks a lot, everybody. Pedro for organizing everything, and Roberto for inviting me, and the very kind hospitality. I was here actually, the last time I was here was, I think, 10 years ago, 10 or 11 years ago, and it was 11. Yeah, so 12 years ago. And part of the event was, I don't know if you remember, was a mini session on my first book, and that was wonderful. I think it was somewhere over there in front, just in front. Yeah, so it's appropriate in a way to be here to discuss the beginning of the writing of this new book. It's not my second book, but it's a new book, and I really look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. It's a work in progress. There's a lot of ideas, and I could really use your help. Okay, but before that, so it's just good to start. It worked before. Now, yeah, okay, now it's working. It's always good to start with a test. Test your audience, if you can recognize all three of these individuals. I mean, one of them you can recognize, unfortunately, right? But can you recognize all three? Right, so this is Trump, obviously. Who's this? Yeah. So that's Ramses II. Ramses from the Bible, from this is Passover for us today. So this is the Ramses from the Passover, from the Bible. That's what he looks like today, actually. This one you don't recognize her? No, nobody?
The sheep, woman who collects seeds? No.
Seeds?
No.
No, it's funny, no. Well, there's a good reason you don't recognize her, because she doesn't exist. I've created her. I mean, not in the sense that she's my daughter. I have a daughter, but she doesn't look at all like that. I have to come here. Yeah, so I've created her. You know this thing, right? Here, it's I can see this American. I love this American thing. Don't worry about legal stuff, right? So if you want to create people for advertisements and stuff, and don't worry about people suing you. And this is how you create all these people. What does all of this have to do with egalitarianism? I'm having trouble with this. I don't know why.
Perhaps Stefan, you can help him change his slide.
Yeah, sure. But it would be much better. Wait. Now it's are you doing it or am I doing it? Hang on, don't do anything. But why does it work sometimes and sometimes it doesn't?
Maybe you have to point from the front. I don't know.
To here.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay. All right, let's see. So why am I bothering you with this sort of stuff? Because these two have something in common which this person does not, and I don't mean being a ruthless dictator. One of them is responsible for the deaths of thousands, building the pyramids, but the other one, maybe as well. But so that's another thing that they have in common. The thing they have in common is they are what philosophers call a necessary person, whereas she is what you might call a possible person. Okay. All of you in the room, I mean, if there's one take-home lesson that you can, tell your partners over dinner, that all of you are a necessary person. I mean, to really be sure of that, I would have to go around and take your pulse and also make sure you don't have a split personality. We don't have time for that, but assuming all of you have a pulse and an identity that's not split, you are a necessary person. You'll notice that a necessary person is somebody whose existence is certain. Now, Ramses is, as you can see, no longer with us. That doesn't matter. Okay, that's important. He had an existence, and he had a 100% certain existence when he existed. All right. And his identity, that is the sperm and the ovum of his parents, met and developed into a person. Okay. So both of these people, I mean, we may regret that some sperms and ovums got together here, but that's another story. But they are necessary persons, whereas this one is a possible person. With the iterations of the world, the joke, but not really the joke about, if a monkey types on a computer enough times, it can produce all Shakespeare's sonnets. So in that sense, there are many, many people who are possible and through some iteration will come into existence, but many people who will not. Okay. No, this thing doesn't like me. Maybe I'll just do, you want me to do? Maybe it falls asleep. Yeah, okay. So, bear that in mind. And now let's go back to the real world or the world of policy, which I'm also interested in. So this is statistics or projections published very recently by the UK, where it says UK Office for National Statistics. And it's for the 4 regions of the United Kingdom. I'm sure you can do the same for the 11th regions of Portugal, right? 11? Right? I did my homework. And as you can see, it's for boys and girls who were born in 2018, which is standard, but also interestingly enough, projections for boys and girls who will be born in 2043 and 2068. So obviously these are projections of life expectancy. What can we say about these things? Many things, right? You know what they say? I lived in England for 7 years, and they say if you take a pound coin and you put it in Newcastle or in Edinburgh, it will roll down all the way to London, right? It's a metaphor for how wealth concentrates in London or in England, and this is translated into longevity, life expectancy, right? So there's more poverty in the other regions, and that's what. And this is projected, not surprisingly, to stay the same and even widen. Okay, so there's all sorts of things you can say about it. But one sort of thing you can ask is you can look at boys and well, let's just focus on boys who will be born in 20 years' time. And just the fact of being born south of Hadrian's Wall or north of it translates into 2 years of life. Is that good or bad from a moral perspective? Well, to that, the answer is obvious. Yes, it's bad. The more complex question is, what makes it bad that this is the case? And this whole book is an attempt to answer this one question. And it's more complex than even I thought initially. It's not a simple question, and it's not a simple answer. So this is a big background, and we're not going to solve all of it here, but this is the big background. If this is bad, and it is bad, okay, if you're a luck egalitarian, some of my work was on luck egalitarianism. This is a straightforward answer. Yeah, nobody's responsible for the fact of being born north of the border, north of Hadrian's Wall, right? This guy is not even born yet. How can he be responsible for having 2 years deducted from his life? And I'm sure you can do the same thing here in Portugal if you talk about Lisbon and the Alentejo. Okay, how do we tackle it? Well, by going to the Bible. And Pedro is holding the Bible there. You can show everybody, because this is taken from the Bible, from Derek Barfitt. So let's familiarize ourselves with, this has become known derogatorily as box ethics. Some people use it in a derogatory way, right? So it's a box ethics. You have 3 people, Tom, Dick, and Harry. You have A and B are 2 things you can do, or 2 policies, right? Policy A, policy B. And you can already see that Tom is what we called a necessary person. Whatever you do, if you do A or you do B, Tom will exist, which is not the same, which is not true for Dick and Harry. Dick and Harry is existent, depends on what you do. In that sense, they are, sometimes it's called a dependently existing person, or we can just call it a possible person. Okay? What do? Derek Parfit says, no difference, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he's that he's a necessary person, and this person is a possible person. We're blind. We should be blind to their identity. Just look at the numbers. If you're a consequentialist, if you're a utilitarian, you go for anybody? You just look at the numbers.
Yeah, it's B, apparently.
B, right. So you maximize utility, you maximize life years, right? This has one life year more than this. So you do B, and it's become known. Parfit was not like Rawls. Rawls had all these cumbersome, boring, stop me. Wegener has blah, blah, blah. For Parfit, it's just, oh, the no difference view. Very simple, right? It's called the no difference view. It does not make a difference. It would be in itself worse if some of the lives that will later be lived will be less worth living, right? 70 as opposed to 71 years of life. And it makes no difference whether, because these future lives would be lived by the same people, these acts would be worse for these people. So you just ignore the identities and you go for the maximize utility. A lot of people don't find this appealing. So here's the alternative, or an alternative, and that alternative will be the focus of my attention in this particular paper. So this alternative we can call the shortfall view, and it's held by Larry Temkin, who you may have heard of, and Michael Zuka, and others. And what it says is that we look at the complaints that people have. This is very simple. It looks complex, but it's not. The complaints that people have if they are not brought into existence at their best possible scenario. So for Tom, if we, the government, do B, how much of a complaint does he have?
A lot.
If we do B, yeah, what's his complaint? How much is it worth? 20,
It's
right?
20.
Yeah, so it's 20. So what we do is very simple. So you aggregate the well-being in each policy, and then you subtract the complaint. So here would be 120, right? And here there would be 121 minus 20. So then we should go for A. Very easy. See the difference from the no difference view, which says, I'm not looking at the names, I'm just aggregating, it doesn't make a difference. And many people think this is more intuitive, the shortfall view, okay? So this is what we do here, you see, so A was 120, this was 121 minus the complaint. And there's a way to liven this complaint up, so you can say, I will spare you all this, but Tom could say, if you do B, Tom could say, hey, I could have been at 70. You just cost me 20 years of my life. Whereas the same is not true for Dick. If I do B, what can Dick say? He can't say anything because he doesn't exist. You got it. Excellent. That's the whole point. All right. So there are no complaints. So this view is really interesting in capturing this.
No, maybe
So
we wait.
if it's clarifications, I'm fine with it.
70 in our case. what does it represent? Is that
life expectancy.
the best as possible?
No, years, 70 years of life.
Yeah, but I mean, given certain condition, the maximum is 70.
Here,
It's not, because here you are talking about expectation, and expectation is not necessarily related with state of affairs. For this, I can.
Very good. I'm going to stop you there. Excellent point. I have a whole chapter just on that. Here, no, it's true. Here, I want to block that. I want to bracket that issue. So 70, 70, 71. This person is going to live 71 years, and the quality of the life, we hold that constant, right? So that's it's not going to be an issue. Okay. And we're also assuming it's positive, it's good life. Okay. Sounds very good. So that's the view that's on the table now. And now I'm going to try and offer you an alternative view. And that view is a bit more complex, and it has two elements in it. It has a prioritarian element and it has an egalitarian element. And it says that the value of each policy, of each outcome, is the prioritarian sum of that well-being. I'm going to explain that in a minute, because not everybody knows what it means, minus complaints, but it's a different complaint. It's an egalitarian complaint. It's not what we call an intra-personal complaint. It's an interpersonal complaint. I'm going to explain all that. Okay, so that's the alternative view that I'm going to offer to you. So my view has a prioritarian element in it, and it's good for us to remind ourselves what is prioritarianism. We're in Portugal. Coffee, right? Coffee is very important. Who likes coffee here?
Everyone.
Good, good. First coffee of the day, heavenly heaven, right? It goes like this, right? Second coffee, great, right? Third, fourth, it's a concave function, right? Concave, right? I happen to think that everything in life is a concave function. We can talk about it some other time. You can invite me. Everything in life is a concave function. But most importantly, here's the magic. So 5 and 5 equals 7 and 3, right? But I'm an egalitarian. I want to make that 5 and 5 greater than 7 plus 3. How do I do that? Well, magic. You put a square root function on it. So the square root function of 5 and 5 is greater than square root. This is not philosophy, this is math, which is better than philosophy. If you thought there was nothing better than philosophy, I'm not a mathematician. I wish I was, I have intelligence. What does that tell you? It tells you that the square root function, which is a concave function, there are many concave functions, has what? It has a built-in egalitarian element or inclination in it, right? When you put something like that on that, it makes this bigger than that. So that's important. And we'll come back to it. All right, so it looks like this. So this is prioritarianism. So prioritarianism means this priority to the worse off. The more, if I have a certain amount of well-being that I can distribute it, if I distribute it equally, the more equally I distribute it, the greater moral goodness I will make out of it. It's not me saying, it's the Muslim mathematicians who came up with this in the 7th century. Yeah. I thought okay. So this was just a quick reminder. So my view, I know I'm putting a lot on the table here. We had the shortfall view that said the value of populations, and I'm talking about populations, like if they listen to me and to Larry Temkins, so the Ministry of Demography, I don't know if you have something like that, or the Ministry of Procreation, do you have? No, you're a Catholic country, you don't. Right, they would listen to us, and they would have ways of putting value on different scenarios that our population can go to. It can pertain to a country, it can pertain to a globe. The shortfall view say sum the well-being, deduct shortfall complaints, a complaint that a person has toward his or her best scenario. I'm saying aggregate the prioritarian value, deduct egalitarian complaints. Don't worry, this will all become clear. Okay. All right, so in the rest of the time, what am I going to do? I'm going to do three things. I'm going to say how the view that I'm putting on the table does equally well as the prevalent view in the literature, in the easy cases. Let's call them the easy cases. Okay, we'll do that. Then I'm going to show you that in three tough cases, these guys, my view does better than Temkin and Matsuka's view. And then finally, if I have time, I'll consider two objections. Okay, you ready? Okay, and I'm going to need your help. So these are so it's going back to the first case. So you remember, they say Tom will have 20-point complaints, so we should do A. What do I say? I say aggregate the prioritarian value and then deduct the egalitarian complaint. Just to test you guys, so what's the egalitarian complaint of necessary person? What's the egalitarian complaint that Tom will have in B? How much is it worth? Complaint he has against another person with whom he coexists. 21, right? So I put the square root function of the two, and then I deduct an egalitarian complaint. What's the egalitarian complaint that Tom will have in A? What? No, 0. Because he's better off. He's better off. He's not worse off. In A, he's better off. 0 egalitarian complaint. You got it. So I and my rivals arrive at the same conclusion, but through a very different way. Okay, we both say A is the best. Okay. Does my view always disadvantage? Is it always wrong to disadvantage necessary persons? Right, Tom is a necessary person. No, it depends on the numbers. Right. So here, Tom, who is the only necessary person. You remember, necessary person is somebody who exists in all scenarios. Right. He's the only necessary person. He's worse off than Harry, but still I would go for B, right? Because the math, it doesn't lie, right? So if there's more well-being, sometimes it will trump, sorry to use that word, it will make it better. It will compensate for the fact that Tom is disadvantaged, right? So it just depends on the numbers. Here again, Tom is disadvantaged under B, and still I would go for B. Why? Because there's all this goodness, right? We use that word purposely. There's all this other goodness, so it compensates. Okay, that was the first part, easy. So these both views, they perform equally well on the easy cases. Now let's see the three tough cases. All right, so here's the first one. This is from Parkland. That guy was a genius. What does the shortfall? No. What do you think is the best? A, B, or C? Just intuitively. See, A has 110 combined. This one has 100, but there's more of a gap. And this one only has 70. So what do you think is the best? A seems the best, right? Okay. The shortfall view, what does it say? Let's do the math. I'm not being boring intentionally. I think this has a purpose, right? We add up my enemies, right? 110 minus A. What does A have a minus against it? Which complaint? Who has a complaint?
90.
Right. Who has a complaint?
Bernard.
Bernard would have a complaint worth 50. So it's 110 minus 50. Okay, and this would be 100 minus B would be 100 minus how much? 40, right? Charles would have a complaint of 40. And C would be 70 minus nothing. That's perfect. So perfect says, on your guys' view, C is better than A and better than B. That's counterintuitive. You want to see how counterintuitive this is? Said perfect. Look what I do. I do magic. I take off. I erase B. I just erased B. Okay? And you're telling me that this is better than this? This is crazy. I teach in the half of my teaching is in the political science department. So that means I have to go to boring seminars about empirical stuff and all that thing. And they do regressions and stuff. And they a whole boring paper, and then there's a regression, voila. I tell them, this is as close as we get to a regression or a mathematical proof in philosophy. If your view reaches this conclusion, that view belongs in the garbage can. Okay, that's as close as we get to a mathematical proof or a regression in philosophy. If you're not convinced, so this is a problem. This is not my argument. This is Parfit's argument. Okay, this is a problem for this view, and these people are aware of it, and they are honest enough and candid enough to even elaborate on this. So consider this. This looks complicated, but it's not. Just focus on the. What happens here is that we start from B1, and we have these two persons, Anne and Beth, and Anne is at 70 and 50. And then when each row that we go down, a person loses, it comes to, I think I calculated it, 3 weeks of her life. Okay? So if you just look at the first two, what are you going to do according to the shortfall complaint, right? You sum. If I do, let me ask this differently. If I do D1, is somebody going to have a complaint? Yes. Who? Beth. And her complaint is worth how much? Almost 20. Almost 20, right? So I should, if I just consider D1 and D2, I should do D2, right? Because if I do D2, nobody has a complaint. Right? Now I go and I say, fine, now let's compare D2 and D3. If I do D2, is somebody going to have a complaint? Just D2 and D3. Who? If I go to D2, who's going to have a complaint? Kathy. And it's worth almost 20 years of life. So I should go for D3. And so forth, and so forth, and so forth, until we get to these Eastern European sounding names. We run out of the alphabet, and then we end up with the 4,901, which if I do it, is anybody going to have a complaint against it? No, nobody's going to have a complaint against that. So this is known as downward spiral. Every row we go, we just lose 3 weeks of life. We say it's worth it to lose the anonymous goodness of 3 weeks of life in favor of the fact that nobody's going to have a complaint. And then you go in this Socratic fashion and say, yes, it's fine, from D1 to D2, from D2 to D3, and then you find yourself all the way down here, and then you compare this with this, and you say, oh my God, what have I done? Okay. My view, how does it do here? Remember, it says, look at the egalitarian complaints of necessary persons. Who is a necessary person here? No one. No one. You remember, necessary person is a person who exists in all scenarios. There's nobody who fits that description. So there's no egalitarian complaints. So I just look at the aggregate prioritarian value, which is highest where? Very straightforward. Okay. Larry Temkin and Michael Zucker are very smart people, and they're obviously aware of it. I'll just go quickly about what, so they're aware of this problem. For their view, I'll just go quickly over what they have to say about it. So this is Larry's reply, and it's not a joke. He has written a whole book, 500 pages, just proving these 3 words, right? Transitivity, right? So to get rid of transitivity. If you think that D2 is better than D1, and D3 is better than D2, and D4 is better than blah, 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 then you are committed to the fact that this one is better than this one. But if you get rid of transitivity, it doesn't follow. This one is better than that one, this one is better than that one, and no, at the end, I'm not committed. D1 is still better. Not everybody's happy with that. You know, there's all these problems with getting rid of transitivity, money pump, right? All this, I won't go into that. It's a main, if you say, I cried about my teaching in the political science department. Now let me say something about my other half. My other half is the PPE program, politics, philosophy, economics. If you tell economists this, they will, I cannot describe their reaction. Like, they'll think you're a different species. So, there's no such thing. Otsuka has a different reply. I'll do it quickly. His reply is to modify his account. He says, okay, so we do all this, but then at the end of the day, we apply another condition, which is if that distribution is anonymously inferior to an unacceptably large degree, then we get rid of it. What that means is that, yes, I do all this and I end up here, but then I stop and I look and I see if it's worse in terms of anonymous goodness. Anonymous goodness just means utility. And in terms of utility, aggregate utility, this is so much worse than that one. Then what do? Take this one off the table. Okay? And then I'm left with, when I take this one off the table, the only one against which nobody has a complaint, then I look which one is the best, anonymously speaking, D1, perfect. Why is that not such a good response? Because I think he's missing one step. Suppose I do accept that condition and I take this one off the table. Okay. Well, then guess what? This one becomes the scenario against which nobody has a complaint. So then I should go for that. And you say, but we have that condition that says if it's inferior to a large extent, unacceptably large extent in terms of anonymous goodness, I'll get rid of it. So I'll get rid of this one as well. And so forth and so forth and so forth until somewhere this has to stop. Okay. So I don't think that's a good reply to downward spiral. Okay, remember my view, handle this one easily. Okay, so that was the first problem. I said there are three major problems with this view. Here's the second one. And it's courtesy of this guy. Let's have a look at this. Two people, Adam and Eve, 4 policies that we can do. Just look at it quickly and tell me what we should do. Notice minus. If you have a trouble imagining what's a minus 2000 look like, again, we're in a Catholic, this is a Catholic country, right? You can say this, is it politically correct to say? So what's a minus 2000? Minus 2000 is you're in hell. The devil is torturing you. And it goes on forever, for eternity. So that would be minus 2000, okay? Something like that. All right, which one is the best? If you were the Ministry of Demography, which policy would you go for? A, B, C, or D? C. D. C, right? C. C is what utilitarians would choose, right? Look, utility here comes up to minus 1000, right? Mind you. Utilitarians will go for C, egalitarians will go for C, prioritarians will go for C, sufficientarians will go for C, Maximinian will go for C, right? Everybody will go for C. The shortfall view, what does it go for? Remember, we sum. So what's the sum of A? We sum and we deduct shortfall. Let's do this. So the score A gets is, the sum is 1 minus 9. Great, yeah, 1 minus 9. B would be 11 minus 9 minus 990, right? And so forth and so forth. I'll spare you the math. A is the best.
Yes, very quickly, sorry, when you say sufficient because we proceed, you're assuming that the threshold wouldn't be set at, say, 500, right?
Yes, I'm assuming that. Yeah. And it's pretty impossible to know what they would say, but given that, if I stipulate that 1 is a barely worth living life, 10 is a good enough life, 1000 is who has the best life ever? Bob Dylan. Who has the best life ever lived? Rembrandt? No, not Rembrandt. He had a lot of legal problems. Bob Dylan, right? So Bob Dylan is at 1000. That would be that kind of life: creativity, success, happiness, whatever. So 10 would be good enough. The shortfall view reaches the verdict that we should go for A. That's great. That's crazy. We don't get to say often in philosophy crazy. Here's the example. Okay. My view, you remember, we look for egalitarian complaints of necessary person. This is the necessary person, Adam. He will have an egalitarian complaint. So he will not have an egalitarian complaint where? In A, right? He is not worse off in A. He is worse off in B, and he's worse off in D. So in A and in C, he's not worse off than anyone. Okay. And out of A and C, which one has the highest prioritarian value? C, right? Prioritarian value, right? The square root of 10 and 10 is higher than square root of 1. So my view reaches the straightforward conclusion that C is the highest. What's happening here? What's happening here? What's the diagnosis of what's going on? What's going on is what's going on in the title. this view, the rival view, is paying a penalty on improvable lives. That's not. So the fact that Eve's life is improvable has a cost for that view, right? The fact that she could be at 1,000 is a cost that you factor into this view. And that's what crippling is, all right? So that's why this objection is known as avoiding improvable lives. You avoid a life just because it's improvable, and that's crazy in terms of population. Okay. That was the second objection. We have one more, the second weakness. We have one more. Questions until now? All right, so here's the third and final tough case, where my view, I think, does better than the alternative, and then we'll consider two objections, and then I can open it up for discussion. Sorry, I know this is taxing on our arithmetic abilities. A, B, and C, what would you choose? C is easy, because notice that the aggregate is the same in all of them, right? 160 in all of them. What would you do? This one is not that straightforward, right?
We toss a coin between A and C.
You could. Who's the necessary person here? Tom. So if you have to choose between A and C, and if we do think that, it matters that he's a necessary person, then maybe we think that C is the best, right? And that's exactly what the short field view would say. So the sum, the aggregate is the same in all of them, but in C, he doesn't have a shortfall. He has a shortfall complaint worth 70. Where does he not have a shortfall complaint at all? B. B. Okay. So they say B is the best. Not crazy. We use the word crazy a lot. Not crazy. My view says something else. Again, I'm reminding you. Where would Tom not have an egalitarian complaint? Here, he would have an egalitarian complaint, right? He would be worse off than they. Here, he won't, and here, he won't. Okay, so B and C are options. For B and C, which one has the higher? You remember the coffee example? B and C, which one has the higher prioritarian value? C. All right, okay. Why is that important? So my view, so they say B, I say C. And I say their view is not crazy, but my view is still better. So I say C is better than B, is better than A. Why is this important? Why is this called extinction? Okay. This is the same as this. It's just a different graphic representation, and it's many, many more people. Here we had one person. This is many, many more people. They said B. I say C. What does this mean? They say, leave it up. Buy those American SUVs and pump them with fuel and gas and burn everything and eat meat and use all the land in the Amazon for your cattle and sheep, and let's live it up. And this generation will get to have the best life possible. Whereas I'm saying, conserve. Conserve so that we will have another generation after us coming. These guys, one of them is you know the word rabbi, right? He's almost like my rabbi. They advocate for the extinction. I'm joking, right? But this is an implication. Okay. Yeah. Now you could say, well, your view is also in favor of extinction, the extinction of the human race. And this book that hopefully I'm writing is a lot about that, about the future of humanity. Some people have said to me, but look, your view has this curious implication to it, which is that it is against an upward trajectory for humankind. It is against the scenario whereby every consecutive generation will be better off than our generation. How come? We are necessary persons. I started with that. All of you are necessary persons, whereas people who are not yet born are possible persons. And if they are better off than us, we're going to have an egalitarian complaint. So there's something in my view which is a bit counterintuitive, that it doesn't want humanity to go up. It wants humanity to go down. It's a good point. So it's a serious objection to mine. Let's see how I deal with it. You understood? If it goes down, then we are the best off, and everybody who's coming after us is we're not gonna be disadvantaged compared to them. Notice that it's also true with regard to the past, right? With the exception of Ramses II, who probably had a fantastic life, most people living in Egypt 3,200 years ago, it is safe to assume had lives that are worse than us. Shorter lives, more laborious, less, they didn't have this, they didn't have this. Assuming these are two good things, and now I'm starting to doubt my own argument, but you see what I'm saying, right? So that's good for my view. Well, they are also necessary persons. Put that aside. My view is against an upward trajectory of humankind. How do I deal with that? It's a very serious objection. I'm going to do two objections and then I'm going to let you go or ask questions. Here's a reply. So this is the same as before, just with the addition of D. Okay, we had A, B, and C. Now I'm adding D. So now it's no longer the case that all of them are worth 160. Now I've changed the picture. What I've also changed is that I've given them names. So this is the current generation. This is the generation after, and this is 2 generations after. All right. Here's an upward trajectory of humankind. And allegedly, my view goes against it. Well, the math doesn't, I should have asked, what do you think is the best? I've already given you the answer, I think, but what looks the best? D, right? D has much more well-being in it. It's almost evenly spread out. It will be favored by utilitarians, prioritarians, sufficientarians, egalitarians, and extinctionists. Okay, people who think that extinction is bad, they will go for D. Still, on the shortfall view, my rival's view, even with this, I don't know if I did the math, you can do the math at home, still B is better. B is 160, this is, do this for me quickly, what's the aggregate? 170, 240, right? Minus 90, minus 10. So minus 100. So 140 altogether. This, they say, is still better than this. My view, after, here's the thing, is that, this is on the shortfall view. On my view, you can check with the square root. Says D is the best. Bottom line. Remember at the beginning, I said the numbers matter. So it's not just we're looking at egalitarian complaints. If there's more goodness somewhere else, it can compensate for the complaint. It's happening here. Right? So I'm not against an upward, this is an upward trajectory argument. It all depends on the numbers. I'm going to do one last objection to my view, and then I'll open it up for questions. Okay. All right. So here's another objection. Very simple. What do you do here? You're a doctor. Suppose it's a pregnancy of twins, right? One method of delivery produces this result, and another method of delivery of the twins produces this result. What do you say?
The same.
It's the same. You flip a coin, right? Indifferent. So there's an expecting couple here, and they're expecting twins, and the doctor comes and says there's two methods of delivery or conception or something, and it's this. They're not yet born, they are formed, right? They have an identity. We've already stupidly given them names, and not even good names. You're indifferent. But then the doctor comes back and says, great news. We thought we had two methods of delivery. It turns out we have three, right? You know, the healthcare system these days, I don't know if in Portugal it's the same, but in Britain it was the case about choice. Nobody cares about the actual outcomes. They care about giving choices. You want choice? Here's a choice. I'm giving you, we thought there was only A and B. I'm giving you a choice of C. Fantastic news, right? Although now, this changes the picture, right? So if you're on my view, you says, well, hang on. Before I was indifferent, but now, look what happens now. This guy, what happened to him? What happened to Christo? What happened to Jean-Claude?
No more, how do you say?
Become a possible person. So now you have to say, well, obviously I'm not going to choose C, but you're going to have to say out of A and B, I'm going to choose the one where Christo is not disadvantaged. So I'm going to choose A. So you know this joke about Sidney Morgenbesser, they tell him we have apple pie and we have cherry pie. He says, I'll have the apple pie, and then he said, they come back and he says, sorry, we also have apricot pie. And then he says, okay, in that case, I'll have the cherry pie, right? So this is in rational choice. This is known as contraction inconsistency, right? So contraction inconsistency, and that's a form of irrationality. I've here you were indifferent, now I've extended it, contracted, and you change your view. That's crazy. Not good for me. Okay, so what do I have to say? Well, first thing to say is that if it's a
I'm thinking.
if it's a problem for me, it's also a problem for my rivals, because you will see it makes the same. It's the same with them. I won't go into it now, but take my word for it. And Otsuka recognizes that it's a problem for him, and he has a solution, and it's a good solution. And it's a solution I endorse. And the solution says, when we're contemplating policies, we should take off the menu manifestly unreasonable courses of action, which C is obviously one of those. So if a doctor, but if a doctor, I apologize in advance to you for what I'm about to say. If a doctor approaches you expecting whatever, it says, fantastic news, I have C. If there's a pond here, push him into the pond or something like that, or punch him in the face, because what you tell him is, I'm sorry, but C is not an option in any meaningful way. You shouldn't even put it on the table. And that's what Otsuka is saying. So he says, take it off the table and proceed as if it was never mentioned. This is beautiful, beautiful mechanism. So once I erase C, because it is a manifestly unreasonable course of action, Jean-Claude once again becomes a necessary person, and then I'm indifferent. So I think it's a good mechanism, and I'm adopting it. And now I'm going to show you finally why this is an advantage of my view. This is a final slide. Here it's the same, but unfortunately the chances are fixed. Okay, so A has a 25% chance of occurring, and so is B, and so is C. But C is fixed, so it's not an option that is offered to you. They'll tell you this is a 50% chance that this is going to happen. Okay, we're offering you the following possibility. You can play with A and B. You can reduce or increase one in favor of the other. Do you want to increase A all the way to 0.5, or do you want to increase B all the way to 0.5? And here my view says, because Christo is a necessary person and Jean-Claude is a possible person, and there's nothing we can do about it, this risk, this chance is given, right? Because of that, I'm going to prefer him. I, the parent, the doctor, the parent of this expected child, the parent, the doctor, I'm going to prefer the one who is for certain going to be born. And I'm going to increase A all the way to 0.5. I think that makes sense. And my view tells you that. We started with this. What does all of this discussion, what does it tell us? It tells us that you cannot evaluate this through straightforward egalitarian measures that we used to know, that exist for 2,500 years. How difficult it is to innovate in a discipline that's 2,500 years old, right? It's tough, it's hard. You have to think of new things, right? You cannot evaluate it in those standard ways. You need to evaluate it with this combination of prioritarianism, this concave function, and egalitarian concurrency. And this is my suggestion of how we should handle these sort of cases and how we evaluate different courses that humanity can take. Thank you very much for your patience. Pedro, you're the chair.
Might well be, yeah. Okay, so questions, both from people online and people in the room. Let's see.
If you have a question from home, just raise your hand, your digital hand.
Actual necessary.
This concept not puts some disadvantage in the possible scenarios, because we are always evaluating the existence points. and always put behind the things that can happen. For instance, in this scenario, if you put, we are only putting all the eggs, let's say, the person that will be born. We are not nothing. The person that can be born. In the big scenario, like in the government, for instance, we put everything in the thing that exists and nothing in the thing that could exist.
I agree that it would have been wrong to do that. What I propose, but also the other view that I was considering, this one we share, is that we should care as ethicists, as philosophers, as demographers, we should care about both kinds of people. But we should care about them in a different way. I'll tackle this differently. Here's one reason why it is obvious that we should care about possible persons, that in ethics we should care about. And the reason is that they outnumber us by 1,000 to 1. This is a recent mathematical discovery. We are now, how many?
8 billion.
8 million, 8 billion, 8 billion. And all the people who have lived are around 109 billion. So that goes from now going back, all the dead people, going back 200,000 years to the beginning of Homo sapiens. Obviously, there were fewer individuals then, right? But so 109 plus 8, 117. On the rough estimates of how many people will live until the sun. I hope no one's going to get a heart attack if I'm going to say that the sun will explode one day. It's okay. We'll find it out. People think it's roughly going to happen in half a billion years from now.
5 billion.
5 billion? No, I forgot. But what I do know for sure is certain is that if you estimate the number of people, so there's going to be 1,000 times more people than the 117 billion that live and have lived. Possible persons matter because there are so many of them. If you care about people, look at the name of the book, Reasons and Persons. If you care about persons, there's 1,000 times more persons in the future than there are in the present and in the past. All of this is to say, of course, we should care about possible persons. But this way is to care about them in this inegalitarian way, where we prioritize necessary persons. And I emphasize necessary persons, not just us, it's also Ramses, also all those who have lived. What are the implications for that? Big story, I touched on it in my previous book a little bit. That's why it has, nobody got the cover of my book. It has the Inca, you know, the Incas. It has an Inca wall. Nobody got the reference, that the reference is egalitarianism with the dead. Okay, anyway. That was a long answer to your question. We care about both necessary persons and possible persons, but we prioritize the necessary persons. And I try to use this to motivate, right? So something like that, you know, we do care as parents. If you say, you know, this child that's about to be born, he or she will be born, whatever happens. I think our sentiment is different than a child that is possible. Any minute that you're sitting here listening to me, I don't have to give you the whole story about bees and birds. is a minute where people here are not creating persons, right? So there's a lot of possible persons that because of me are not coming into being because of this seminar. Is that a disaster? No, but if as a consequence of my talk, an actual child will be killed, very different, right?
I want to ask a question in the same vein. I think, that might give people time to think about your talk specifically, but it's a very sweeping general concern, not this one, but given the non-identity problem and things like that, what kind of moral complaints can these people, even the ones in 2043, lodge against us?
No. Very good question. None.
Yeah. At best, we're talking about the same number of choices, right? Not the same people choices. And if they're not the same, if they're not fixed people, then I think at best something like a threshold of deficiency could apply. But anything beyond that seems to be not a legitimate complaint.
It's a big topic you're touching on. I was looking to see if the blackboard, we had a blackboard here, but we got rid of it. This one, yeah, sure. It's very quickly. It's this person bed, and you do A, B, or C. This is what kind of a person is Beth?
Not a necessary person.
Yeah. So Beth is a possible person. And yeah, you can hardly see.
Yeah.
Sorry. So if Pedro here goes and does B, what do we call Pedro? Start with the name. O-N-S-T-E-R. Monster, right? If Pedro goes and does B, Pedro is a monster. Why? Sorry. Why?
Sure.
Yeah, but in everyday's language. You have, for no good reason, deprived this person of 20 years of her life. If you do C, what do we think of you? Anyone? Doesn't need it. It's fine. This is, as I said, this is what all of you are doing now. When you're sitting here, as far as I can see, you're engaged in C, which is not creating that. And that's fine. What does that mean? It means that if you don't have an obligation to bring Beth into the world, right? If we had that obligation, all of us would have to have 20 children. But we don't do that, and we don't think it's bad, and we don't do it. But if you bring a child into the world, you have an obligation to make that child's life the best possible. Certainly not to harm it in a gratuitous way, right? And other things being equal. What does all this elaborate thing is to say to you, Pedro, that you're on a very important topic, which is we think we owe possible persons, we owe them something, but it's very hard to articulate. What is it that we owe them? We know what not to do. We know what it is, what would be monstrous to do. You know, all the debates about the deaf couples who want to select for deaf, you know, so if the whole debate, whether it's a disability or no disability, but if it was a disability, it would be like harming a kid on purpose, right? So it's like that. So we do owe possible persons, we owe them something. What's the best way to articulate that something? That's a big question. Does that answer?
How would you go about articulating it?
Okay, I would go about articulating it in the very following way. I would say that Beth does not have complaints, but Beth has interests that we are bound by. I know it doesn't sound much like a difference, but I think it's an important difference.
So in a way, it would be kind of supererogatory.
No, that's not the direction I'm going. Future people, non-existent future people have interests that we are bound by, but this does not translate into complaints. Obviously, I have to put more beef into this, but this is how I would go about it.
Hi, Shlomi. This is Alexandra. Do you mind if I ask you something?
Hi, yeah.
Hi.
Good to hear your voice again.
Thanks. So just about this last thing you were saying about we're definitely owing possible people something. Why? Why do we owe possible people anything? And isn't it a bit strange that we owe possible people something while not giving real people whatever it is we might owe them?
So I don't know, can you see the...
I try to put the camera.
I wrote something on the blackboard that I didn't have in my, and that was by way of answering exactly that point. So just, there's this person there and you can do 70 years of life, you can do 50 years of life, or you can do nothing at all, not bring her into existence. And I was echoing something that many people say, it's not just me, that if you bring that person into existence with a life expectancy of 50, then you're a monster. If you agree with that, right, you're a monster when you can do that. You can bring her in 70 and you bring her in 50 for no good reason, you're a monster. And that means we owe them something. Is that acceptable to you? It's a proof that we owe possible persons something. We owe it to them to erase that middle possibility.
Well, that has always seemed very strange to me because I owe people when they go from being possible to being real. I have an obligation to a real person that I am responsible for bringing into existence. But I don't really know what the idea of possible people is doing it here. What's the function of that idea of possible people?
Well, as I was
how can you even satisfy your obligations towards possible people?
And the fact that all of us here in this room were at one point possible persons, which is the case, that doesn't change your view about this? All of us were possible.
But there are so many people who are not here and were also possible and keep being possible. I don't see why that matters when all we have to deal with is real people. So right now I'm looking at you and seeing other people in the room, and I'm talking, trying to be understood because that's the people, because you are there. But if the room were empty, full of possible people only, this seminar wouldn't be happening. So what I think is that possibility is not useful in ethics in terms of existing being considered moral, being being people you owe whatever sort of moral concern.
Okay, so what about this thought experiment? If we only cared about actual necessary persons, there'll be nothing wrong with the following policy or with letting happen the following thing. You probably all know this novel. I think it may be by Saramago, who's Portuguese. The life of Life of Man. There's a movie where the globe, where everybody becomes infertile. It's not Saramago? Blind. No. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm confusing it with. Children of Men. Yes, Children of Men. Yeah. There's a movie. I thought it was.
Yeah.
It's not Saramago, right? No. Anyway.
No, I don't think so.
So the globe, through a mysterious disease, so not by malice, becomes infertile. You should see the movie. It's the worst thing you can imagine for humanity. On your view, or the view that you sketched here, there will be nothing wrong with it, because all we care is about necessary persons. They go on living, they just die naturally, and there are no new people coming into this world. I think it will be worse than all the Holocaust and the Black Death put together. Don't you agree?
Well, that's such an extreme case that I could answer both yes and no. If I'm a person like David Benatar, is that his name? I'm an anti-natalist, and I would be thrilled at the possibility that at very high stakes that humanity would finally vanish. If I value humanity, the species, then I would be concerned that the way to reproduce the species was so fragile. But I'm not talking about individuals when I regret the fact that only one person is fertile. I think what worries me is the species, not the individuals.
Yeah. I'll say one final thing and trying to convince you.
Okay.
If all we cared about is necessary people, then we could get rid tomorrow of all the environmental policies we have, because it means that 120 years from now, there's no need for there to be fuel. There's no need for there to be land. There's no need for there to be calories to be produced. All of that would not matter. And we should stop all of our environmental policies if we did not care about possible persons. And that's crazy, right? Nobody thinks that. Maybe Trump thinks that, but apart from Trump, nobody thinks that. Yeah.
So the possible persons can be like limits on our policy.
Yeah, absolutely right. So I tried to show that with the extinction example. If you have the choice between making our lives better or saving some, for a future generation, then you should do the second thing. Yes, they are. You know what? That's a good answer to what you said. It's a good answer to what I should have said to Pedro. So while they don't have complaints, they act as a constraint on what we should do. So that's a good formulation for me.
Just repeat what you just said.
So what's your name? Philippa said the possible persons, remember, they outnumber us 1,000 to 1. A lot of people are making, this is new stuff. If your PhD students tell you, I don't want to do, if your undergraduate students tell you, I don't want to do a PhD in ethics because there's nothing new to say, Aristotle and Plato have said it all, tell them there's all this exciting new stuff coming out in ethics. Coming out of these revelations, right? So that possible people outnumber us by 1,000 to 1, according to best estimates. If that's the case, and they are persons, they are human Homo sapiens. They don't have interests now, you could say, but they will be around and they will have interest. So Philippa says you should look at them as constraints on what we do now. I think that's exactly right.
May I insist? Just one more point. When we take measures to stop the climate crisis, or to make it less destructive. Well, we often have to do that, depriving existing people of things that other existing people have enjoyed.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if meat production is a main cause of pollution, now countries like China and India, who are increasing enormously their demand for meat, are being told, well, you shouldn't be meat eaters because we've polluted enough and now it has to stop. So future people maybe will be benefiting from technology which allows us to raise cattle without polluting emissions, and they may eventually come to a point where meat eating is not dangerous for our survival. But right now you have people who would also want to eat meat and are being denied that. So we are sacrificing the people, the present people who really exist, for possible people we don't even know who they will be.
Okay,
Is that a problem?
Yeah, so I have two things to say about that. First, notice that because these issues are so complex, we have to bracket some of the issues. And one of them is this intra-generation inequality, right? So there's an inequality in this generation across the globe, as you rightly say, between the developed world and the developing world. And it's complicated by the fact that the developed world is the one that's responsible for all the emissions, and now they're telling the developing world not to emit when they did not emit. Anyway, so we cannot handle everything in one paper. So we bracket that issue, important as it is, and we put it aside. That's one thing. That's one thing to say. The other thing to say is that remember I had this point about the upward trajectory. This is another new thing. I tell my students there's a lot of fascinating stuff, new stuff in ethics that comes from collaboration between the sciences, between ethics and archaeology, for example. Yeah, crazy as that sounds. There's some collaboration between archaeology, like all these people who are trying to count how many people have lived. As a side note, I would say Parfit, who was a genius, he has what's known as the Egyptology objection. I don't know if you've heard of it. The Egyptology objection says something about it's a proof why we shouldn't care about the past, is that in order to do philosophy, you would have to understand something about Egyptology. That's what Parfit said. And he said that 30 years ago, and he thought it was crazy. This is what we're doing now. We are doing ethics with Egyptology, prehistory, all of that. We're doing it with statistics, thinking about the future. This is where the point I was going to make. We already know that life on Earth, here, this is good news for you. Although all the stuff I said was depressing, here's good news to take home. Life on Earth is going to go better as we progress. Why? For the reasons that Alessandra was mentioning. We are going to grow more calories from every acre of land. So don't believe doomsday accounts. Every acre of land is going to produce more calories in the future. Good calories, not bad calories. Not beef and all this crap and corn and all that, but good calories. And other aspects as well. Energy, right? You know, all these studies about energy and how little usually radioactive stuff is going to produce clean energy and all that, and it's going to come from small things and all that. Yeah, so life on Earth is going to go better. Why am I saying this? It's relevant. You know, it's relevant for making all these decisions. We are not the victims. We, the necessary current living generations, when we make sacrifices for climate change, we cannot, Alexandra, say, we are the victims, because our lives are good. Our lives are good, and they're going to continue to get better and better. Is this convincing? It's convincing to me. I don't know. Maybe not for everyone. I wanted to say something.
My problem is that I couldn't really hear your talk very well because of the sound, and I'll have to listen to it when the recording is out. But I always had this difficulty in understanding our duties to people that don't exist. Yes, I understand that we have this sort of premise that the species will go on existing, and what we do now will have impact on people who will live in the future. But I'm not totally convinced that that's our problem. But of course, I don't have children, and maybe that's something that also has some weight in the way I think about the future. I think it's sort of going above our duty to consider possible people before considering existing people. But that's.
I have another thing to try and convince you, but I'll wait. I want to hear Pedro and.
Okay.
Okay. I wanted to ask you specifically something about the upward trajectory stuff. One thing I wasn't so clear on is whether that's merely a byproduct of your view, or if it's something that you actually that you think is a necessary condition for a plausible view.
No, it's a problem for my view, but I try to show that on the balance of things, I handle it well because all this, because of the prioritarian element of my view, it would allow for an upward trajectory depending if the numbers are big enough. That's the best way I can put it.
So I want to ask why you think that's a problem, because I think I'm sympathetic to you, even though I can't quite articulate why either on the issue of interests of future people, whether we cash it out in terms of interest or constraints, whatever it is, I'm sympathetic, but I'm less perhaps convinced that be it the upward trajectory or the downward trajectory,
You're indifferent about it.
right? Why do the interests of future generations?
Well, it's a good point. It's a good point. You may well be right about it. I will only say this because we now sort of know for certain that this is the way things are going to go. It's funny when I talk to my students about this. I start the lesson and I say, look, you're going to hear very scary stuff in this class today. Everybody who's too afraid is excused. Okay. They look startled. And then I say, okay, what's the most scary thing you can think of? Politically, not privately. You know what they're saying? And I think this nuclear war or starvation. What do they say? Iran. God. In Israel, right? So Iran. Yeah. This is because they read the garbage that the government is printing out for them. Why am I saying this? Because the worst thing that can happen to us is that humanity is going to go. Yeah, but now we know that that's not, despite all these fears, it's probably not going to happen. Things on Earth are going to go better and better until the sun burns out, and then it's not going to be nice. But yeah, is that so? Just to say, I don't have a clear intuition on that, and you're onto something that people are not thinking about it too much because they assume it's going to go one way.
Thank you. It was really fascinating. But so I love the question, but I think I'll ask one very basic one. So one is about this idea of possible people, because I think as Alessandro was mentioning, referring to that too, because one idea is that people will be possible in the sense that there will be future people. So they're possible now in the sense they're not existing, but it will be existing. But the other interpretation would be they're possible in the sense of being a possibility. They might or might not exist. So think about a future generation that might or might not exist in this sense. So do we have an obligation to bring that generation into existence? And the idea here is, well, if we don't, right, then maybe the most moral solution would be the solution on one point that you pointed, it's about the collapse and say when you try to you maximize whether it is the well-being of the present generation.
Yeah, I don't think it's a solution.
I know, but say on this view, so the idea is that if that is a mere possible, these are not just future people, they're merely possible.
Yeah. So
we don't have, unless we have an independent obligation to bring them, obligation to bring them into existence. Right?
Yeah.
Which is not just a castle plan. Just the idea that we cooperate.
Yeah.
Then the idea is maybe we don't have any obligation. And actually, if we don't bring them about, then there's no issue about what kind of well-being they will enjoy. So the question is, of course, I think that the idea there is that the question is, when you say possible, you're thinking about like future people, right?
Yeah.
So what we do now cause them to exist. And so it is along with that, it comes the obligation to, to prioritize well-being along with egalitarian consideration. So that's the clarification we wanted to ask.
So that's a good point. I'll say two things about that. Look, the reason why this is so difficult on the one hand, but also so fascinating, I mean, to me, it's fascinating, is because it really challenges our intuitions. It's hard. They're actually, I talked about the new, relatively new interdisciplinary work that's being done. So some of it is psychology. So you probably know about this. So there are studies in ethics and psychology about the limits. We're talking about the humans, Homo sapiens all the time. Homo sapiens, let me tell you, have limits. Some of them are evolutionary limits, and they have to do with big numbers limits. So there are a couple of interesting numbers. We are incapable of perceiving big numbers. Future. People don't know what it means when you say million years. There are studies that say that for evolutionary reasons, you know, hunter-gatherers, all that, we don't know what it means. 100 years, and we cannot fathom it. So here's one way to try and answer your question. So suppose, this is not my example, it's a nice example, but it's not mine, I wish it was. Suppose you're at the beach and you're drinking beer, okay? Happens, right? Suppose your beer bottle slips, breaks, okay? Lies in shards, glass. And then suppose, should I pick up after myself or should I, just go home? And if you're a normal person, not a monster, you think, oh my God, what an idiot. I mean, tomorrow a kid could come here and walk on this glass, okay? So you pick up. What if somebody tells you 1,000 years from now, a kid is going to walk here, the glass is going to still be sharp and he's going to cut his feet. Does that make any difference? Of course it doesn't. A kid is a kid. It doesn't matter if it's tomorrow or 1,000 years from now, if it's still a kid, if it's not Avatar or it's not like a mutant or whatever. So we have a psychological problem processing this, but we can help with these thought experiments. Right? You should clean up after yourself. Okay, what does that mean? Or here's the other point. We have a difficulty grasping possible persons. So here's another thought experiment. Suppose there are these tubes with sperm and ovum, and they can be fertilized through some automatic process, but they're frozen, and we store them, and they'll be fertilized in 1,000 years from now. But there's a mechanism that will randomly select between the two. There's all these twos, and a mechanism will select between the two. And an egg will be fertilized and will develop into a human being. So there will be a human being, McKenna, there. We just don't know who. Now, do you have a duty today to make sure that 1,000 years from now, there'll be enough oxygen, ozone, calories? Of course you are. Does anybody have a doubt that you have that obligation? I don't have that doubt. Just because it's in the future. So you mentioned like egalitarianism. This is where like egalitarianism comes into view. It's as bad that a child is worse off, even if he happens to live in Africa. It's not his fault that he was born in Africa. That's spatial, S-P-A-T-I-A-L, justice. And the same way, it's not his fault that he's born 1,000 years from now. That's not his fault. He deserves same kind of justice. So does that help? Hopefully. I still need.
No, I was asking the question because when you talk about possible people, I think the idea is there is possible people, future people could exist and live independently.
No, so that's why I gave the example of this machine that will select, right? So there's these two ovums, and one of them will be fertilized, and it's not your decision. It's a random mechanism. Doesn't matter. There's going to be a person there, right? We just don't know who. No, I thought you had a question. No.
Yes, but.
May I put just one more question, and I promise it will be the last.
Sorry, we have another question here in the room, and then you move on.
Sorry, this
Okay.
process is a bit silly, and I might regret it later, but I suspect this idea that we owe future people at least some concern as stems from the idea of local restriction, according to which people, whenever they are born, are deserving of the same opportunities that we enjoy.
No, I don't think that's Locke, but anyway, go ahead.
And also this idea that the fact that we are concerned with future possible people has something to do with being parents or not. I don't think that holds, because in my experience, I had a lot of heated discussions with colleagues who already are parents, and I seem somehow more concerned with their future than themselves who had children. So
Yeah, good point. Good point. Then
also there are a lot of people who don't want to have children because they are worried about the future.
Yeah.
And which planet we are going to leave behind. So
that's a very good point, and it relates to.
It's not really a question, but.
Yeah, you know, it's a good question. It relates to what Alessandro was saying, and what I was going to reply. All of what I said does not mean anything about individual responsibility to become a parent, a biological parent. Okay, that should be understood. It applies equally to parents and non-parents. So this is a responsibility as a species. As a species, you have an interest and a duty that there will be others after you. It doesn't translate into a biological obligation. That would be crazy, right? Here's a nice way to illustrate it. I noticed Samuel Scheffler was here. So Samuel Scheffler has this nice argument. It says, look, a lot of people are skeptical about future generations and all that, but if they stop and think for a minute, they realize that 90% of what they do because of future generations. If you write a novel, then you're doing it because of future generations. You know why? Because it wouldn't make sense to write a novel, or to do a PhD in chemistry, or to find the cure for cancer, or to write a poem, or to paint a painting, if there won't be anyone around in 50, 60 years to enjoy it. So even if you're not a parent, even if you have no intention of becoming a biological parent, almost all of the stuff you do is dependent on the fact that there will be people around, because otherwise there's not much use to what we do. We might as well just eat and drink and sleep, but that's not what we do, hopefully, right? Does that help? So it does not translate into being a biological parent, but it does translate into the fact that it's in your interest that there will be people after you to give meaning to what you're doing. Otherwise, there's no meaning to it. Philippa.
And when we talk about the possible person, we just talk in the future, the next generation, or could we exist right now, here, now, in the present? Here are possible persons now,
A necessary person has two conditions. Their identity is fixed, so it's not separate sperm and ovum. It's fertilized, so it's one identity. Right? I don't know past you tell me when does it stop splitting? When is twinning impossible? Which week? You know?
It depends in which country you're talking about.
What?
It depends in, you're talking about. Oh, the twins.
Twinning.
Yeah, it's possible until almost the birth.
No.
Yes, because one twin can assimilate the other.
But that's different. I'm more.
Twins is like 20.
12. Oh, really? That late? I thought 12. Okay, anyway. After twinning is impossible, and once existence is certain, identity is fixed, and existence is certain. So he or she's gonna be born, or they were born. So possible persons, they are around us in labs. In labs where they store unfertilized eggs. That's a possible person.
And I have any responsibility by that.
I'm going back to that example.
They don't born, but I have responsibility.
Your responsibility is to eliminate B. Does that make sense? I know it's tough.
I'm gonna have several questions. You want to ask?
No, it's just like, so the example we had before about, okay, you have a machine and you run a collection, okay? So when you do that, you actually have a causal contribution. You're just actualizing one rule, right? There are several possible words.
But the machine is doing it, not you.
Well, you and the machine are doing it, right? You need
No,
to-
you said it's like a lottery. It's like the Champions League lottery. You press a button, but you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So, right?
Right. So my point was about this idea that when it's possible, I don't know, it's not even in a different way. It's actually so identity is not fixed.
Right.
But you know there will be a future existence.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, and the idea is that that is enough and sufficient to establish some form of obligation. Seems to be that's the kind of
No, the two conditions together: fixed identity and certain existence.
That's for necessary people.
Yeah.
But for possible people,
if they lack one of those, they are possible. They are merely possible.
the other question is more technical. I didn't understand the way you define the concave forms of substitutarians because you treat square roots, the Praetarian, I'm so sorry, the Praetarian view. So if you could go back to that, because
Okay, is it on? Yeah, I'll just put it here. Square root is a complete function. That's just try. But it's not the only complete function. They can go up and down. What it means is that if I give $1 to a homeless person, and if I give $1 to Donald Trump, the contribution here is bigger. That's what it's further. And what I try to illustrate as well is that this has egalitarian consequences. Right? That's just mathematics, not physics. So that's egalitarian. I want this. I want a more equal distribution. That's just you do the math. You see. So the square root is forcing you to have a more equal distribution, and that's what we like about it. Does that help?
Yeah, I was trying to say, so. So on the egalitarian view, it's okay.
No, it's a prioritarian view that has egalitarianism built into it. I didn't discover it, right? It's just, but it's a reason why I like it. Yeah.
So first of all, I have to say that my background in philosophy is not so general. So for me, it was like a kind of too abstract. But I think that the point, I understood the point. Even so, there's one question I'd like to ask you, and this related with what Alexander perhaps said. Alexander is name. You said in this scenario, we should avoid.
Yeah.
So we go for A.
Or C.
Or C. But if you go for or C, she doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Or A.
Yeah.
The best one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
My problem with things that you put into brackets.
Mm.
If I go for A, how can I be sure if I go for A, it's just for everyone that nowadays that are necessary people. So for someone to have A, how do I make sure that it's just for all necessary people that nowadays actually live? Because Alexander asks that kind of question. Why do I have to bother with people that don't really exist if there are some people that exist? And why don't I put their interest first? And you said you put into brackets. That's one of my problems when I think of these kind of things. I realize there's like a kind of more obligation with next generation.
Mm-hmm.
But don't we have first of all, moral obligations with some other people that exist today?
No, so I tried to give like.
How can they have the best life in the future? And at the same time, be sure that that best life doesn't go contra with the best life that people nowadays should have, but they don't.
Okay.
I don't know.
You're all no, it's interesting. You're all pushing me in a very certain interesting direction, and I'm happy to go there. I'll say two things about it. One, going back to this evolutionary point, we have a built-in problem thinking about these matters. Let me make this concrete. So think about Italy, or what's the country in Europe with the lowest birth rate? I think it's Italy.
Unfortunately, it's also as a
Yeah. So when people think about it, they said, okay, the Italians are stopping babies, but there's all these refugees, all these African refugees, so balances out. But that's the wrong way to think about it, because when we're thinking about the globe, there's not going to be Martians or people from Venus coming in to step in. When it's done, and it's irreversible, folks. When this species is done, it will take billions of years for what's it called? The big explosion, the Big Bang to happen again. Right, it may not happen again here and whatever, for these bacteria to form again and to result in this magnificent product of humanity. It will take billions and billions of years. So I'm just saying this as a problem that we have in thinking about this. So we're thinking about Italy. Okay, all right, so birth rate is falling, but then it's compensated by no. When you think about humanity, there's no compensation. Okay, that's the one thing to to think about. The other thing that I have in mind to say to you escapes me now. But just to reiterate the fact that, no, hang on. I forgot, it will come back to me, I'm sorry. But I hope that helps in a way.
Maybe Alexandra has another question. Alexandra?
Yes, thank you. Just one thing I was, well, sorry. Can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, so just lots of.
I remember.
Sorry?
One other direction that this whole thing, this whole premise is pushed from, you guys didn't mention, which is, I mentioned utilitarianism. So some utilitarians are saying, well, you know, utilitarians, they care about pleasure and pain, right? So there's human pleasure and human pain. But what about all the animals? Even both Mill and Bentham, or just Mill, one of them, I think Mill, said we should factor that in. So even 150 years ago, one of the leading utilitarians would say, when you do the calculus, right, the famous utilitarian calculus of happiness and pain, you should take into account the animals. Now the animals, remind you, they outnumber us, right? So remember that. So you should multiply it more. So some people say about extinction, Alessandro was mentioning Benatar, it's not exactly this argument of his, but other people are making the following argument. The extinction of humanity is good on utilitarian grounds, because there will be much more animal happiness. So you're pushing me on that. So that's a way to do it. There are responses to that. If you're interested, there's a good response to that. I think I can go into it if you want, but it's one direction that just doesn't accept all of this. Right. So on utilitarian grounds, human extinction will be good, because there will be less, won't be any factory farming, there won't be prosciutto, all of those things.
So just a comment, just a comment and a question, a comment on what you said about the meaning of life. That the meaning.
Other questions? Remarks? Doubts? No?
So you can't hear me?
So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your patience.
I'm sorry, but can't you hear me?
You can close the presentation and take the thing out.
Yes, I can try.
Thank you so much. For all the help.